Today we're going to go into the Indian Ocean region, and thereafter, once we finish off the Indian Ocean region, we'll take the open hour, and your questions are all welcome. Uh, I want to tell you that this is a continuation of what I did on Diego Garcia some time back. Right? It's the virtually the same continuation. So I'll start from there, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay. The first thing is, look, this is the Indian Ocean. Everybody, we've all seen the map. We've seen everything. We known all this. Uh, you see where the Chagos Archipelago is, and that's where we concentrated last week. Now we'll expand our horizons and see the other issues which are in the Indian Ocean. Okay. The next thing, look, the Indian Ocean has four choke points. Okay, very major issues which I let me highlight it further. Okay, the first thing is this is the Malacca Strait, the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el Mandeb, and the Strait of Madagascar or the Madagascar Channel. So these four choke points virtually enable control of Indian Ocean completely. Okay, that's something which one has to keep in mind always. Now, the next thing is the trade routes. I had explained the trade routes to you completely last time, but I'll go over them again so that we have clarity. You know, if you see the trade routes, the main trade route is from Suez Canal, which is here, right? Mediterranean Sea, Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, Bab el Mandeb, Gulf of Eden, south of India, or through the channels of the Maldives to Malacca Straits and beyond. Also from Cape of Good Hope, there are direct channels up the Madagascar channel up to the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz, and then straight across, cutting across through the Sunda and the Ombak Wetar states. So a whole lot of shipping, everything goes on in Indian Ocean. Probably one of the busiest oceans in the world. I would say the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean compete with each other in terms of trade and things like that. Okay. Now, what next? Let me change the thing. Okay, let's go back. So this is the kind of trade which you see in the Indian Ocean, right? You see in the top, the amount of shipping which goes on at any one point of time is humongous, right? Okay, now let's look at this again. The main islands in the Indian Ocean. What are the main islands? We come from top Lakshadweep, Maldives, Diego Garcia. We spoke of them. Then Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion. Now, and of course, you have the east coast of Africa, the Indian Peninsula, which juts into the whole place, and then the Indian Peninsula, which juts into the whole Indian Ocean, and the Indonesian archipelago, which is the western corner of Indian Ocean, and then you have Australia. Okay, now let's go a little further. Look, this is the only nation named after a country, India, Indian Ocean, India. No other nation in the world has an ocean named after a country. Now, a lot of people say, look, this is not India's ocean. It's just named after a country. And that's what China keeps yapping about. But that doesn't matter us. As far as we are concerned, this is Indian Ocean, and I view it as India's ocean. Others can view it any way they want. Okay, this is vital to world trade. It contributes immensely to global economic prosperity. More than 75% of world's maritime trade and 50% of global oil consumption goes through the IOR. Remember this. Huge. Okay. Okay. And this region is home to 33 nations and 2.3 billion people. That is the nations which ring the Indian Ocean, or the Indian Ocean rim, as they call it, or the Indian Ocean littoral also is another word which they use. Okay, the Indian Ocean region, it accounts for 80% of China's energy imports. Okay, and is essential for China's trade activities, making it a strategically and economically significant geography. And not only that, as we go along, you'll realize that bulk of China's BRI trade, everything also goes through Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is very critical to China. Okay, and that is why it wants to enter China. I mean, it wants to enter the Indian Ocean region. If it has problems in the Indian Ocean region, its economy will collapse. For the simple reason, if I go back, the main trade route that is from the Gulf, I mean, and the Gulf of Eden and the Hormuz Strait, everything comes here and then goes up. You choke this, China has choked. Every import out of China comes through this. So again, whether it's for imports or exports, this geography is very critical to China. Okay, what are Indian interests here? Indian interests are from the Gulf of Eden to the Malacca Strait. Let me tell you this. This is not something which is new. Way back in 2005-6, Mr. Manmohan Singh laid it out for the first time. Till then, we were very fuzzy about the whole affair. I think it was around 2004, 2005. He said Indian interests are from the Gulf of Eden to the Malacca Strait. And that's when he defined really, and the first contours of Indian interests in the Indian Ocean came forth. Till then, we really didn't, bother too much about it. Okay. The next thing is, you must understand there are a whole lot of major populations around. I told you 2.3 billion, but look at it from a slightly different point of view, because this is one ocean which interacts with the landmass. A lot of people depend on this landmass, and the interaction between the landmass and the Indian Ocean is huge. What happens on the landmass affects the Indian Ocean, and what happens in the Indian Ocean rim lands affect the ocean. So there's a lot of connectivity between the landmass and the ocean, like no other ocean. Okay, I have a look at it a little closer. See, you have 1.3 billion people of Africa, but even if you say 50% are Indian Ocean dependent. The complete 400 odd million of West Asia largely are dependent on the Indian Ocean. At least the Gulf fiefdoms and the oil producing countries completely dependent on the Indian Ocean. Okay. Then, of course, India with its mammoth presence of, when I say India, the Indian subcontinent. I wouldn't like to call it South Asia anymore. It's the Indian subcontinent. The Indian subcontinent with 1.83 billion, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, some of the most populous nations in the world. And then, of course, you have Indonesia and the countries of Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, those which have Thailand, which have an interest in the Indian Ocean direct. And then this extra regional power of China, though it's an extra regional power, it has tremendous interest because it has stakes here. So this is the kind of population which surrounds the Indian Ocean. Look, now I'm going to zoom out a bit, and we're going to talk of a little bit of the Indo-Pacific, because at some point of time you can't differentiate between what's happening in Indian Ocean and what's happening in the Pacific Ocean. The concept of Indo-Pacific is relevant. I'll talk about the Indo-Pacific separately, and I'll come back with these slides to connect some other day. But you have to understand the Indo-Pacific region is home to 8 of the top 20 economies. Okay, the Indian Ocean itself, when you look at it, you're looking at Saudi Arabia, India, Indonesia, and Australia are the 4 top 20 economies. So a lot of money is flowing here. And the other major economies have an interest here. Okay, then major conflict zones: West Asia, Israel, Iran, India, Pakistan, China. Okay, then of course, though the Ukraine, war doesn't have an impact on the Indian Ocean or vice versa, it's there. You can't rule it out. So is what's happening in the South China Sea or Taiwan. That impacts the Indian Ocean region. Okay, and then there are, BRI and maritime disputes in the Indian Ocean region itself. So virtually, if you have a look at it, the Indian Ocean is host to 3 conflict areas direct, and then here I've not put other sub-conflicts or sub-national or sub-conventional conflicts like what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Myanmar. And in fact, Myanmar is the key to the Indo-Pacific. Not many people look at it that way. It is that the center, it's the heart of the Indo-Pacific, to my way of thinking, is the Myanmar. And we've let it loose. Everyone has let it loose, right? So it has anyone who gains Myanmar gains a lot in the Indo-Pacific. But that the Chinese understand. I don't think even we have understood it that much. I don't think our government has also understood it that well. Okay. Now, some of the biggest defense spenders ring the Indian Ocean. You call it the Middle East, whole lot of Middle East countries, including Israel, Iran, Pakistan, India, Singapore, Indonesia, and of course Australia. At this point of time, if you look at the Indo-Pacific as a whole, count in China, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And many of these countries are dependent either on USA, Russia, or China. And these days, India is also coming up. So the biggest defense spenders are in this area, and also all the big defense suppliers have an interest here. That's the importance of the Indian Ocean region. Now, there's another thing. Major disasters happen around in the rim of the Indian Ocean. Look at the thing. I'll not go into the details. Whether it's cyclones, whether it's tsunamis, whether it is earthquakes, the works. So you have wars, you have disasters. Both these, to sort them out, you need strong armies. Okay, right. Now let's get back to the geography of the Indian Ocean and understand this geography, because then you'll understand who has a play where. Like I said earlier, we spoke of Lakshadweep, we spoke of Maldives and Diego Garcia. You have the Andaman Nicobar chain on the east, and Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion in the almost midwest of Indian Ocean, and the western is the African continent. These 3 ridges, which I spoke when I spoke to you about Diego Garcia, also dominate this area. Okay, so these 3 ridges, whoever controls these 3 ridge lines or the underwater geographic features, that is the Andaman Nicobar chain, the Lakshadweep, Maldives, Diego Garcia chain, and then Seychelles, Mauritius, and Reunion, they control the Indian Ocean. You need to have a base in these places to really control the Indian Ocean. And luckily, We have the Andaman Nicobar completely with us. Uh, Lakshadweep is ours. I spoke to you about Diego Garcia, where we have a stake and we are anchoring uh, USA to be there. And Maldives is in our grip. 6 months back, Maldives was seemed to be slipping away, but now it's coming back. And Seychelles and Mauritius are good friends. There's no problem. We have a base called Agalega in Seychelles. In the north, this is Oman. At Oman, uh, you have this port called Duqm, which you operate, which will become very important for our navy to operate from. Because Oman doesn't want to get upset by Yemen, Oman doesn't want to get upset by Iran or Saudi Arabia or UAE. So Oman banks quite a bit on its relationship with India to keep it secure and safe. Okay, and so you have these ports which are important, and for one, India has a firm footing all over. I mean, you have to understand we have a very firm footing all over. It's something which not many people will appreciate, the fact that you have this kind of a firm footing. And a lot of this firm footing doesn't come from hard power, it comes from soft power, it comes from trust. People trust us. It also comes from something called you are the first responder in this area. For all natural disasters, you are the first responder, including water. Okay? And that people know. For China, it's a matter of tyranny of distance. Remember this word, tyranny of distance. China has to come all the way through the South China Sea, through the Malacca Strait, and then come anywhere near here to be effective. It cannot, no nation will take the risk of, snapping its ties with India and going completely with China. In fact, Maldives is the ideal test case for this, where everyone now knows, look, you can't do without India in the Indian Ocean. That's what makes the Indian Ocean India's ocean. Okay. Now, of course, just to reiterate, these four: the Strait of Hormuz, your, Bandar Abbas, right? Not Bandar Abbas, your Bubble Mandab, Strait of Bubble Mandab, Madagascar, channel, and this are the main Malacca Strait are the main thing. Whoever controls this controls the Indian Ocean. Okay, and that is where it's important that the choke point for China is there. It's got a base at Djibouti, but it is the Indian Navy which controls the eastern coast of the Africa for Somali piracy, anti-piracy operations and all that. Which other navy is dominant here? It's the Indian Navy and the American Navy. The other navies are all showcase. Okay, and Chinese Navy doesn't do anything, incidentally. I don't know why it's hanging around there. What are the challenges in the Indian Ocean? And the challenges are huge. I put here. There's disasters, which I told you. There are conflicts, which I explained to you. There is piracy off the Somalian coast. Not only off the Somalian coast, there's a lot of piracy which happens on around Andaman Nicobar also. Terrorism. Okay, terrorism is, though it's land-based, projects itself into the sea. And don't forget, terrorism come piracy, which affected Maldives long back. And someone wanted to do a coup against Maldives and throw the government off and take over Maldives. Till we intervened and restored the situation. So terrorism is a problem here. Illegal fishing. There are reports, mind you, of the Chinese fishing fleet coming and doing fishing in this area, somewhere where this pointer I've shown, that red pointer. Okay, if you're not able to see it fully, I'll show it. Yeah. So it's somewhere here in this area. that Chinese fleets, fishing fleets, have come to do fishing and illegally. Okay, then there is this thing of dark shipping. What is dark shipping? Dark shipping is generally those ships which don't disclose their location and carry cargo without, it's underhand. And who are the ones who are involved in it maximum? Iran and China. Iran and China are the ones who are into dark shipping. They don't transmit anything, nothing. You can't stop it because it's so vast a thing. And probably they have other channels through which they communicate. We don't know, but they don't emit. Okay. Then there's drug smuggling. Drug smuggling is rampant in the Indian Ocean region. Okay. Then there are geopolitical ambitions of nations because, like I said, you control the Indian Ocean region and you control a lot which is happening in the world, right? So, to that extent, the Indian Ocean region is very important. And then, of course, the last challenge which all nations face is China's rise. So, we'll talk of all these uh, in bits and parts. I'll not go touch upon all these, one by one, that you can fathom for yourself. But let me touch upon certain issues which drive these factors. Okay. First, who are the players here? Right? If you see from the top, there are a lot of players in this area. The players are, India, of course, which is at the top, China, USA. These three are the main players. China, India, and USA, followed by France. France has territorial, territory here. The French Reunion Islands are its sovereign territory. Okay. Then the UK. UK has its interest through Diego Garcia. Okay, and nowhere else. Okay. Then you look at all the other countries, Turkey and all these which come into play. Have a look at it a little closer so that you see the thing, right? Yeah. So you have countries like UAE. How UAE and Turkey, how do they get their influence over this area? Because UAE, of course, Dubai, right? And that's there. And even Japan has interest. Japan is a big player because it has tremendous amount of investment in these areas through loans and building and all that. Okay, right? So you have the Muslim principalities of Turkey, UAE, and Saudi Arabia who have a thing here, and of course Russia. Russia is a completely extra regional power which has interests here and is a player here. And why is it a player here? Because it supplies arms to many countries in this area. The old USSR legacy makes Russia also a player in this area. So these are the players. But like I said, the main three players are India, China, and USA. The Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and UAE influence the Muslims in this area. Okay, and they have Turkey mainly. It's more through ethnic connections. But if you look at Saudi Arabia and UAE, it's the royal power. Okay, that's what makes them a big player in this area. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia and UAE have influence over Pakistan. They have influence over the Muslim nations of Africa. Not forgetting Malaysia and Indonesia also. Okay, so there are a lot of players in this area who. Which are the countries who trade? Which are the countries which trade maximum? You have a look at it. It is China, USA, Japan, India. That's why I said Japan has a lot of trade. That's why it makes Japan an important player in this area. UAE, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Russia, France, and Australia in the descending order. Okay. India's trade might not be much, but its linkages in this area are huge. Remember that. Okay. If I put it on a graph, this is how it is. The big graph the one which is taking off is China. If you look at it on the thing also, China virtually laps most of the other countries. About next four countries put together is almost equal to China. That's how the whole story is. Okay. Now, France has a role in the Indian Ocean region, which I said earlier, because the Reunion Island is part of France. It's sovereign territory. Now, US. At one point of time, US had maximum, trade links with many of these areas, but not anymore. But what it has is significant arms transfer or other arms. It is the most significant supplier of arms to these countries, whether you call it Egypt, you call it Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, okay, and India, Pakistan, right? You look at Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. All these countries are dependent on arms. So, and it's got the biggest security presence. The complete central command of USA is around here with this Qatar, and you have this island of Diego Garcia. So, plus it has, though there are no bases in Indonesia and all these places, Australia, it has a strategic partnership. It's an ally. So, anytime US forces can get deployed in Australia. So, the security presence of USA is unmatched. You have to understand that. It's only matched to a large extent by India because India is here, complete Indian Navy is here. In fact, in the Indian Ocean, Indian Navy is probably the biggest navy. Others might have navies outside, they can bring more here. But to maintain them, they need India. That is why India and USA have this agreement, logistics, the Memorandum of Understanding, LEMOVA. Okay, as far as USA is concerned, I explained last time also the importance of Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is a base from which it can USA can control. There's Diego Garcia, which it can control Indian Ocean. Guam is the next base with which it can control the Pacific. So both these bases make USA the strongest naval or the strongest security provider in this area, or the strongest or the preeminent military force in this area, notwithstanding the fact that China has the biggest navy. China doesn't have reach in this area, right? Now, let's look at China. These are the BRI countries. They all ring, of course, forget about South America and all, or Western Africa. But if you look at it, China has a huge presence through BRI all around us, or all around the Indian Ocean. And then, see the trading partners in the Indian Ocean region. Right, the various colors, notwithstanding, China trades with all of them in various forms. That's the whole idea. If you have a look at it at peace, those of you who are studying for exams and all that, when you look at it, China trades with some for some it imports maximum, or some countries import maximum from China. For some countries, China is also, they export maximum to China. So the bilateral trade between any country of this area is maximum with China. Okay, now what is China's game in this whole story? You have to understand. Now, as you see here, what I put down here, China desires to be a superpower with a two-ocean axis. Now, I have to go a little on a tangent. Remember, any country which desires to be a superpower has historically controlled two oceans. Okay, look at Russia, the North Sea, and the Sea of Japan, Vladivostok, and all that. Pacific, basically. Okay, USA has the Pacific and the Atlantic. Britain had the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Okay, India, though it's not a superpower, but it has two seaboards, the western and the eastern. That's what gives capability. But look at China's geography. China doesn't have a geography to control two oceans. That is why it wants to control, you know, through Myanmar, it wants to control. This is Chokfu, wants to control from here and enter the Bay of Bengal. Okay. So, what does China? I mean, if I look at it from a point form of view, as of today, China has full control over the South China Sea. Its BRI and CPC are successful in terms of control. Whether they are give return of interest or not is a different story. Strategically, they have hold. Now, we have been speaking of India, which has been contained by the string of pearls. Though the string of pearls are broken and it's no more valid, but from a Chinese perspective, it's still there. China has a considerable presence in the Indian Ocean, right? Can it overcome the Malacca dilemma? It's a question mark, right? China desires a major base at Gwadar, Pyaku, Maldives, or Hambantota. Without a base in this region, China cannot achieve its two ocean dream. A base in Gwadar will give it access to the Indian Ocean, and Pakistan desires that. That I've shown. This is, Gwadar, Maldives, Hambantota, and of course Chokpu. These stars are at little different places, but that's just understand that. This for larger understanding. Then China has tremendous port investments in the Indian Ocean region. Right? All these ports along these are all port investments. What are these port investments? In all these places, it's either building the port or operating that port. So there's always that lurking fear that China can use these ports for military purposes. So if it can use these ports for military purposes, does it need a base? So it might not need a base. But the flip side is, just because you're operating a port doesn't mean that's a base, because a base means you need to have refit, you need to have maintenance spares, which is quite a bit for ships. It's not only for ships, you need for all weapon systems and all that, plus ammunition. Where do you keep ammunition in a port which you operate? So there are both sides of the whole story for Chinese port investments in the Indian Ocean region. But a combination of BRI and these port investments make China a strong player here. Okay, they have 17 ports in the IOR with some degree of Chinese involvement. And they have massive projects like deep water ports and terminals at Gwadar and Lamu, and construction of small terminals like the livestock terminal at Port Sudan. That is in Sudan. Okay. Plus, it is involved in construction of 13 of 17 ports. That's what I told you earlier. And they have financial involvement in 8 projects. China funds. China has 2 forms of funding, which many people don't understand. It is not direct state funding alone. Chinese firms fund, right? So that is off the book funding, and the rates for that are never known, right? To some extent, sovereign funding is through BRI, but other funding is through the Chinese companies. So you have to understand, if Chinese debts are, say, in the region of 10% officially, they're actually about 20 to 25%, double that, because the second half is through the Chinese companies, right? Those countries where China is constructing ports, right, are indebted to China already, like Kenya, Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Djibouti, and all these have significant Chinese debt. So will they be able to withstand Chinese pressure if the Chinese military has to operate from there? Is always a question mark. Okay, though Kenya doesn't like it. Kenya is now, that is why you see Kenya is now shifting, and it is using India as a hedge. So is Sri Lanka. Okay, and Djibouti, luckily, just next to Djibouti base is an American base and the French base and the Italian base also. So Djibouti, I don't see it as a major base, but of significance, except for anti-piracy operations and for the convoy protection, convoy of their import-export merchant protection. But the other countries can be susceptible to Chinese pressure. Okay, of course, we're talking of Djibouti and Gwadar. Let me take out this whole thing and see. This is Djibouti, okay, and this is Gwadar. That interrelationship you need to understand. In Gwadar, in Djibouti, China can hold ships. In Gwadar, it can hold everything as a major base. The synergy between Djibouti and Gwadar is huge, because those who control Djibouti and Gwadar will control the complete energies and trade routes, one of the most important trade routes of the world. So that is the thing which comes into focus when we talk of China. Okay, right. No, China last year held a Indian Ocean conference. Okay, all the countries of the Indian Ocean region it called to China to hold a conference. Who was the lone absentee? India. Of course, later on, Australia also withdrew from the whole story. And one more country I'm forgetting of the thing, they went. It called 19 countries, all of them went. All of them went because they had no choice. Okay. But otherwise, there is something called the IORA. IORA is Indian Ocean Rim Association, where India is a major player. Every year there is a conference of the IORA. Significantly in IORA, China is not a invitee, or it's not a member, and that is why China has held its own conference out of IORA. So these things one must understand. I would suggest those of you appearing for exams, read a bit on IORA and the Chinese conference on Indian Ocean, which they have conducted. It'll okay. Now you look at the hotspots. You have on one end Israel, Palestine, where who are the players in this? China, Iran, H3, that is Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, USA, India, and Pakistan. In the Afghanistan and that belt, again, you have China, Iran, USA, India, Pakistan, and Russia. Look at Myanmar, where players today, Myanmar, when I say Myanmar, let's include Bangladesh also. Myanmar and Bangladesh, China, ASEAN, India, USA, Japan, and Russia are major players. Then, if you look the other side, which is part of the Indo-Pacific, you have Taiwan, parcels, and Senkaku Islands, where the players are China, USA, Australia, and Japan, and ASEAN. So you have three major hotspots here which you have to handle. Oh, right. I mean, I will not go into each hotspot because that's a subject by itself, and we'll cover it as we go along. Someday we'll talk of Afghanistan also. Okay, what are the major issues in the Indo-Pacific? I'm talking of Indo-Pacific because then you'll get a wider idea. First is, of course, nuclearization, which is going on between, what shall I say, South Korea and Japan. Today, people are talking of nuclearization in South Korea and Japan because China, Russia, and USA are also nuclear states. Of course, don't forget North Korea there. So that's nuclearization there is a major issue. Okay. Now, when you look here, look at Afghanistan and the nuclear triangle there. Now it's no more a nuclear triangle; it will be a nuclear quadrangle with Iran also on the verge of becoming nuclear. Then you have West Asia. Major issues for it, which impact the Indian Ocean are in West Asia. Terrorism is a problem. Piracy is a problem. Energy flows is a problem. Resources is an issue. Trade is a major issue. Then in the Indian Ocean proper itself, you have maritime security and BRI. And when you look at the South China Sea, you're looking at South Chinese assertion and their aspiration to be a superpower. So that's going to impact the Indian Ocean completely. Without the Indian Ocean, China cannot become a superpower. Okay, that is something one has to understand fully. Then, like I said, today there is a nuclear hexagon in the Far East with China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, Russia, and USA. Though South Korea and Japan are not nuclear states, they're tending to be slowly. In the West, you have, in this area, you have Iran, you have Israel, you have USA, which is headquartered there with its own nuclear arsenal, whatever it has out there, Pakistan, India. And of course, China also is hanging around there. So either side of the Indian Ocean is completely nuclearized. So the nuclear environment in the Indian Ocean is pretty heavy. Okay, and then of course I spoke to you. This is the Chagos Archipelago, which is the dividing line of the Indian Ocean. You have one triangle on the east, which is India, Andaman Nicobar Islands, and Diego Garcia, and the other one, which is Agalega, Diego Garcia, and India. Now you control these triangles, you control Indian Ocean. But if you open your mind out, I mean, I will not, I'll go to that a little later. Okay, let me go to that and I'll come back here. Okay. Now, if you open your mind out, okay, you have to see there's another triangle which will form in the Pacific, which is between Japan, Guam, and the Malacca Straits, or Singapore, Australia, that triangle. So it is these three triangles which you have to hold if you have to contain China, right? And you need to also deny bases to China, and you have to somehow deny port access. Port access will always be there for civil movement. That's not an issue. For military access, you have to hold. And of course, there are other issues which are connected with this. That is, we have a live problem with the LAC, and Xinjiang is also a problem in the larger run. So the LAC impacts the Indian Ocean through India. The debate in India is always, what do you do? Do you have a maritime strategy or a continental strategy? So this balance is something which impacts the thing. So when I come back here, I've shown you these two triangles. This orange ones, that is this quadrangle of Gwadar, Chokfu, Hambantota, and Djibouti is what China is aiming. The day China has this quadrangle complete or part of it, remember, we are in trouble. Okay, that is why we are assertive on Hambantota. We have to somehow ensure that Chokfu doesn't fall. Okay, and there are issues which are happening. Maybe someday I'll give it a little more detail as things open out. Gwadar is going to be a base. In fact, the rumor is that this will be the first overseas command, out of area command of China will be headquartered at Gwadar. But then there's a long way to go because Gwadar has other issues. Djibouti, like I said, is largely an administrative base at this point of time. Okay. So this is all about the Indian Ocean region. Okay. So this is the whole story, the two ocean theory and all that. So I hope I have explained everything to you in detail. And yeah, we'll take on your live. I see your comments. Yeah. So I finished. With this, I'll take on your questions pertaining to the IOR as also your general part of the open R. Okay. At the end,